Tower of London is one of the most famous castles in all of history. Happening to be one of the oldest intact castles in England, its history dates back centuries. Both as a royal residence and its more famous counterpart as a royal prison, this castle has told many a tale through its history. Most history lovers will be familiar with the infamous Tower of London, in some fashion. From its most famous prisoners such as Anne Boleyn, to its seat as the height of political power and control, the tower has had many faces and told many tales throughout its lifetime. In this video, we shall be going over a few of these facts you may not know. When you describe the Tower of London today, it is often thought of, for its current iteration, as a more famous tourist attraction, bringing in millions of people to London as a must-see location every year. However, when it was first conceived and indeed first constructed, the tower wasn't built with even the slightest thought of its modern purpose in mind. Instead, the tower was built to be a powerhouse, a great looming structure and seat of imperial power. For centuries, the tower dominated the landscape of London, being seen for miles, its two partners being Westminster Abbey and St Paul's Cathedral. Over time and through the centuries, the landscape remained dominated by the tower, but other palaces crept into the skyline, such as the Palace of Westminster and Whitehall, for example. Yet if one was to look out of the ramparts today, they would struggle to envision this. Nowadays, the tower is imposed by buildings and even skyscrapers. Before it, on the water, the great Tower Bridge sits proudly, commandeering even the water view. Yet historians can suggest another location for you if you want to understand its dominating power it had over the medieval skyline. If one was to travel to the top of the Shard across the water from the Tower of London and ascend to its topmost floors, you would begin to get an idea. The view you would have over London, that ability to look down upon everyone and everything, is the equivalent to the view that the tower, especially the White Tower, had during the medieval period. The very thought of our shorter ancestors craning their necks to see the walls of the tower from a height near identical to the path between the tower and the water does very distinctly remind you of how small a human is. It wouldn't be that hard to picture a young royal realising how mighty kings can believe they are with such a dominating view like that one. Number 2. Many an individual who has developed a liking for fantasy literature have heard for the names like George R. R. Martin and J.R.R. Tolkien. These famous texts weave story of political and spellbinding worlds, full of monarchy, good and evil, and have a medieval-esque backdrop. As such, it would come at no surprise to anyone that George R. R. Martin's work is inspired by history, specifically by the Wars of the Roses. George himself has happily stated that fact on a number of occasions. However, less is spoken about Tolkien's potential influences. We speak often of his love of Norse and his work as a professor in Old English and the time period it was spoken. Interestingly, however enough, Tolkien's expertise do also include periods of the Norman Conquest. When William conquered England and became king, he felt the need to build seats of power. But like any structure, William the Conqueror needed an architect, and one had caught his eye. A monk, originating from Normandy, had travelled to England with a contingency of others in 1070, who had an eye for architecture. William would go on to make him the architect of 2 castles, and his son of III. The monk in question's name was Gundulf. Gundulf built 2 castles on old Roman ruins. It is believed in 1076 he was ordered with the construction of Colchester Castle from the remains and foundations of the Roman castle of Camulodunum. Once his work was complete, he would go on to his next project of the construction of the White Tower in the Tower of London complex in 1078. These 2 structures have been seen in literature of the period being referred to as the 2 Towers, including in a potential piece of evidence about their ordered construction. Whilst it may never be confirmed, there are a number of individuals, historians, literature academics and others who believe that both the name Gundulf and the 2 towers of Colchester and the White Tower influenced and inspired Tolkien's Gandalf and the 2 White Towers of Minas Tirith and Minas Ithil. Number 3. We all know the Tower of London in some manner, whether you are familiar with just its name or you have ventured through its halls. The name is ingrained in your mind. However, the name the Tower of London, much like the Houses of Parliament, is not its official name. It is quite common in the buildings of London for places to be called something different from their original name, the most strikingly different being Big Ben, whose official name is the Elizabeth Tower. Thankfully though, the Tower of London does not have too different of a name from its official, the official name being His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London. We just prefer the shorter version, it seems, though the long one is quite a mouthful. Number 4. We all famously know who built the Tower of London, or more specifically, who ordered its construction. As soon as one ventures into the realm of learning about the tower, they will find the line, "Built by William the Conqueror." However, the tower we see today is not how William originally designed it. Some structures, such as the White Tower, have not changed. However, others have been grown, adapted upon, replaced, or even destroyed. The main configuration of the tower, with its 2 walls and large moat, was the final formation by Edward I, after he built on the initial work of William the Conqueror and King Henry III. Additional specific work within the tower can also be seen in individual structures, such as the Chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula by King Henry VIII. The incarnation of the chapel you see today is the Tudor construct, after the original burnt down in 1512. Number 5. Whilst we commonly like to speak of treason when we talk about the Tower of London, it has imprisoned others for different crimes, and even executed them. One such example is in the year of 1278, under the rule of King Edward I, also known as Edward Longshanks. During the reign of King Edward, the offence of coin clipping became a problem. Coin cutting during the Middle Ages was the crime of taking the silver currency of the nation, a currency that's worth was to do with the weight of the precious metal, and changing it. For example, if you had a £1 coin, this coin would have a £1's worth of silver in it, and clipping off the edges or rim so that the removed piece could be remelted down to make 2 coins instead of 1 was a crime. This crime was high up on the list of offences one could commit, due to the fact that we are still aware of it today. Much like today, during the Middle Ages, money, and as a whole, currency, was important for a nation to run. English currency during the reign of Edward I was highly respectable, especially for its accuracy of silver to the correct weight. Such respectability led to trade increases as foreign merchants trusted the currency and felt that they were being paid fairly due to the accuracy. So when coin cutting suddenly gained popularity with a ferocious vigour, Edward had to do something about it. Otherwise, his respectability of his currency and subsequently his economy would both be damaged. Coin clipping, or coin cutting, as both names mean the same thing, was hard to catch compared to other crimes. However, Edward was a feared and respected king, instead of a beloved monarch. And in 1279, in the context of cracking down on coin clippers and under pressure from the church, Edward took action on a religious group, the English Jewish population. Edward imprisoned some 700 Jews inside the Tower of London. It is unknown whether any were in fact guilty of coin clipping, or if they had all been chosen as religious scapegoats to portray a message. In the crackdown of coin clipping, the punishment of hanging was enforced. From the 700 imprisoned in the tower, half were given fines and half were hanged. The ratios of Christians to Jews became some 10 Jews to a Christian being hung for the crime of coin clipping. This event culminated into the passing of the Edict of Expulsion, formally expelling the Jewish community from England until it was eventually reversed. However, this was seen in history as potentially one of the worst persecutions, miscarriages of justice in the Tower's reign as a prison. To greatly support this channel, please do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.